Anyways, but we are back, and it's time to get back into our study. As you know, we have been in Luke. I thank Katie for covering last week the message that was on her heart, but we're going to get back into our series in Luke, and you can go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 2 if you want to get in that ballpark. But just to kind of get us back on the same board, Luke 1, basically, I was calling that "But God" as I go through. I think I shared with you a few weeks ago that Michael Card has a practice that he does is when he sees these little titles over different sections, like today's "The Boy Jesus in the Temple." He likes to cross those out, study it, and then come up with his own title just as part of his study to make it more meaningful and connect with the Spirit. I don't really do that, but I have been finding as we're going through one common theme in the chapters. And so with chapter 1, I've called it "But God." It's just filled with impossible things that make no logical sense for Zacharias or for Mary or for the whole family as a whole. But God can do this, whether or not it's a virgin birth or an elderly barren birth, that God can do whatever he says he's going to do. And the second one, as we've gone through the birth of Jesus and the shepherds and have been moving through, it keeps coming back to me to be trusting faith, to choose to trust in his words, to choose to count on his promises and to live as such, whether that be Mary and Joseph being there in the stable with their baby in a manger, wondering if they missed a step. How could the Messiah be born in a stable? But nonetheless, it's exactly what God planned it to be, so that the shepherds, when they get the possible news of the Messiah being there and they need to go look in barns to find the King of Kings wrapped in swaddling clothes, that their faith would be confirmed through that just miraculous circumstances that continue to make Mary marvel as she shares this story with Luke. But today, as we go into this one, there's like one last story. It almost kind of seems like it ends if you look back at verse 39. When they had performed everything according to the law of the Lord with the Simeon and with Anna, they returned into Galilee to their own town of Nazareth, and the child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him. That little paragraph by itself basically suggests to me that's all we're going to hear about his growing up. That it was the intro, it was the setting up, until he comes out in his public ministry till he's about 30 years old, somewhere in that range, and when he first steps out. It really sounds like it's almost the end of that conversation with Mary. I can almost picture it this whole time. For me, at least, I'm picturing Luke sitting at the feet of Mary, hearing about these incredible stories. I don't even know if Luke had heard about Jesus' birth before. I think that would be crazy to think about. This is the first time he's hearing from Mary's own lips these things that amazed everyone, what that would be like. But that, to me, once I hear that, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, thanks, for your testimony. Thank you for spending time with me. And, you're someone that I'm sure wants to spend time with. I'll get out of your way. And he's almost kind of putting one hand on the floor and getting up on his knees, getting ready to leave. And then all of a sudden, Mary says, but wait, there's one more story. And there's one story only shared here with Luke that Mary decides we need to know, that Luke needs to write down, that needs to be out there. And I really want us to stop and pause on that for a second, because there's 27 years of Jesus' life, but his mother says, you need to know about this one situation out of everything else. And so to me, that piques the interest a little bit about why would Mary want to do that? Why would she make Luke sit back down? Why was this so important for us? And thankfully it is. This would have been lost forever. But it's because I truly believe there's so much that we have to learn, not just about Jesus' character through this particular testimony, but what he's modeling for us and how we should be able to take it as well. So that's what we're going to dig into. We're going to start out in verse 41. We're going to read a big chunk, talk a lot, and then read a couple of smaller chunks and talk about those at the end. So if you're ready, again, the Bibles are out and moving, youth version's up and running. And this is what she tells Luke to write down. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't know it, but supposing him to be in the group, they went for about a day's journey, but then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem, searching for him again. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to them, "Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress." So we'll stop there a little bit. There's a couple of little side points here that I think magnify the main point that I want to make sure we cover. The first part is talking about Passover, talking about making the journey to Jerusalem for Passover. One thing, I think I've mentioned this before, as we get further into this, we're going to see some things repeat about Jesus and about his family. But when it came to those festivals, those three festivals that they would celebrate, the way that they were set up is if you lived, I think it's either 26 or 28 miles. I can't remember exactly which one. I think it's 26. If you live within 26 miles of Jerusalem, it is mandatory for every good Jewish man and woman to come to Jerusalem to celebrate that event. It's part of their law, part of their custom. If you live further than that, then it was optional. And what we know is Jesus and his family lived in Galilee, a lot further than 26 miles away. It's about a 100-mile hike between the two. And so it was fully optional for Jesus and fully optional for his parents to be part of these events in Jerusalem. But yet we always see Jesus traveling to Jerusalem for these events. And we see here he did it as a custom as his parents did, as they were dedicated to those festivals. So his parents traveled as well. The interesting point within that is pretty much from Jesus' baby years all the way through his life, he was traveling at least 3 months a year because of these festivals that he was on the road and moving forward. So it definitely tells us something about their commitment and about their honoring when it comes to being at the synagogue, when it comes to these holy events and for these things that honor God. The other thing that we find within this, and this is an important detail, is Jesus is 12. I think for most of us, when we hear something like that, we automatically try to think of somebody that's about 12 in our life, whether it be somebody in your family or within the church or whatever the case may be, or maybe think about yourself at 12 and what a goofy, awkward person you probably were. I know I was. But I don't know if that necessarily does this justice as far as how it would have been in Jesus' day. Because with Jesus' day, again, if you're 12 and you're a young man, you're becoming a man. You know, like when you look at the Jewish community and they're having the bar mitzvah, am I saying correctly? Bar mitzvah? It's because you're becoming a man, and it would be during your early teenage years of going into this. So that means that Jesus at 12 is now being responsible as an individual instead of just a child within his household. He's responsible for whether or not he follows the law. He's responsible for his own choices. He's responsible if he decides to not tell mom and dad he's going to stay in Jerusalem for a few extra days on his own. It is a time of responsibility where he is making his own decisions based off of how he was raised and what God calls him to be. So those two are pretty important within this. And then I like to think a little bit about, again, them losing the Messiah for 3 days, right? I think that would be kind of an overwhelming thing. And realistically, even if they didn't in that moment, think about it as losing the Messiah for 3 days. You lost your kid for 3 days. And that's a very panicky moment. I don't know if any of you guys have ever gone through a time when you can't find your kid, or they're going through a situation that you can't solve for them or protect them from. I remember a time, I think, how many people remember Gold Circle department stores? Anybody? How old am I? Gold Circle. Okay, everybody that's older than me should raise up your hands or else I just feel bad. Okay, Lindsay, thank you. Yeah, just lie about it, Cindy. It's okay. Gold Circle was a big department store, like, Kohl's or whatnot. And I remember when I have a vivid memory. I was about 5 or 6 years old shopping in the one in Westerville with Mom. And I must have took a turn, and she took a turn. I remember there was about 2 minutes of me not being able to find her. And I remember as a kid, you're pretty panicked out. But the vivid memory that I have is Mom finding me and just how unbelievably panicked she was. The look on her face is still burned into my heart. Now, most of you guys would be like, she probably went straight for the car. But no, she was looking for me, and she was happy to find me. Okay. Of course. That only makes sense. But there would be a very panicked moment here. And for, I think, any normal adult would have the response that they do, if not even more so, when she's like, I just hear a lot of emotion in this. Son, why have you treated us like this? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress. This has been overwhelming the last 3 days. Why would you do that to us? I think that's a very normal response from adults. Let's say, again, my daughter's much older than this now, but she's 15, ready to learn how to drive a car. That freaks me out. Anyways, if she disappeared for 3 days and we were hunting for her, searching for her, and I found her, I don't care what youth group event she's at. I'm going to be lit, right? It doesn't matter if he's in the synagogue or not. I'm going to be upset because I've been stressed out by my kid. I've been afraid. I've had every voice thought going on in my mind. So I think this is a very normal response that we're seeing. While all these people, again, keep in mind, this is the gospel of amazement. The people in the church are amazed, and the parents are amazed. And while he's there, we see that he's listening as well as and asking questions as well as he's taking and teaching them at all. So that would be my normal response, at least. I fully get where they're coming from. And then we see Jesus' response is very, very different. I think if in my case scenario, or your guys' case scenario, if you see your kid and they've been gone for 3 days without telling you, the kid's normal response would probably be peeing their pants or scared to death or know that they're getting grounded for life, whatever the case may be. This is Jesus' response in 49. He said to them, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" And they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. That's key. They did not understand what he was saying to them. So that's his response. When we watched The Chosen on the viewing nights that we've been doing on Wednesday night, and they did this scene, it was a nice, beautiful little scene of him trying to figure out when his timing is, and mom's kind of directing him and whatnot. They give a lot more favor to this than what I see here, and I'm just admitting that up front. If my kid, after I say, "Why did you do this to us? Where have you been? We've been in great distress," looked at me and said, "Why are you looking for me? Did you not know I must be in my Father's house?" My response would be, "You little punk. What a snotty thing. Get in the car, because I'm going to lose my mind," right? I mean, if they didn't understand what he was saying, doesn't that sound kind of snide that he's saying there? Because they didn't fully get. Now, when she's telling this story to Luke, now it makes sense. Now I get it. I get what he was trying to say. I get where he's at in life. It makes perfect sense now. But in that moment, I think she wanted to paddle the boy hard. And probably never had to before. He never sinned before. I'm sure he's still aggravating at times. But still, that would just be overwhelming response. And I think when we look at this, most of you guys here in the room know this story before I started reading it today. I think most of us look at it and say, well, we get what Jesus is trying to say. He's in his Father's house, and of course that's what he needs, and he needs to grow within the Lord. I just don't know if that would have been my immediate response. Now, I think the reason we have this, and I'm going to get Chris's help on this a little bit. I put down some thoughts of, okay, if he's questioning and he's listening and he's teaching, think about the reasons why he's there. He is there because he has a different purpose. That's one of the reasons that this is literally his Father's house. He has a purpose. He has a calling in his life that he must follow. We understand it because he has to grow. He's 100% God, 100% man, and in his man essence of things, he's learning. He's asking questions. As we go back to 39 and 40, that he grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him. It was a process that he leaned into, like we're invited into. It was there because that's his community. That synagogue is basically what they had version-wise of the church. This is where they got together. Even though Pharisees and Sadducees and religious leaders and some of the junk that was within it, this is his community. Of course he's got to be there. Of course he's got to learn. He's in a pivotal time as he's becoming a man. He's reaching out to others. They're amazed by what he's saying to them. For this 12-year-old to be able to have the insight that he has and the questions that he has and the things that he has. He's reaching out to others, and he's got to focus on his Father. If he's coming to realization that he is the Son of God, then he wants to be in that relationship. He wants to connect not just the community, but the Father himself. It makes perfect sense now, no matter how snide it might have sounded in the moment. Now, here's the important thing for us to start transitioning into, and probably the biggest question I have when it comes to this particular study. If it only makes sense that he's in the church for these reasons, doesn't it make sense and only make sense that we are in the church for these same reasons? If he's modeling life, like look at baptism. Again, he did not have to be baptized. Not a baptism of repentance, he never sinned. But as he told John, no, I got to do this to fulfill all righteousness. I got to show them that it's important. as part of their walk, after they accept Jesus as leader and forgiver in their life by acknowledging with their mouth He's the Son of God, and believing in their hearts He died and rose again, and turn their lives over to me, that you are to be baptized. Even I got baptized, even though I didn't have to. I'm modeling this for them. This is Him modeling what the church is supposed to look like and what we're supposed to be getting from it. And when you look at the things the world has for us, that takes and takes and takes and takes from us, He's showing us this is how you plug the car in and get some fuel before you run on empty, before you're crashed and burned on the side of the road. We call them by some different things. Chris, if you go to the next one, I just kind of put it in some of the things we talk about when we talk about the 5 purposes of the church. He had a different purpose. You have a different purpose. You have a ministry. You have something He's called you to in your life. You have a unique makeup in your spiritual gifts, your heart, your abilities, your personality, your experiences, to be doing work for the Lord. You have a calling, and you need the support of the church and the community and God through it for that. When we talk about grow, we talk about discipleship. That's what we tend to call it around here when we're talking about things. Growing to be more like Jesus. We do that both individually and as the church. When we talk about His community and having the community around Him, we talk about fellowship. People that we're building relationships with, that we laugh with, that we cry with, that we support one another. When we talk about reaching others and what He's doing, that's evangelism. We're reaching out to those who need Jesus. I love the prayer that Mike prayed at the end of our worship practice earlier today. It was just praying for lost souls and people that need Jesus to come in the doors and for us to be able to reach them both here and abroad. So that's very much who we're called to be. Focus on the Father. It's our Father too. It's our Father too. And that's where the worship comes into place, of putting Him first, of focusing in on Him and remembering that relationship and touching into that relationship. Again, both at home and individually and also as a community. Then we start structuring things. And structuring things has its place. It has its place. It helps us be able to look at things, to be able to gauge things a little bit. Like this next slide is our discipleship process or struggle, well, not a struggle, but just I think our discipleship structure would be the best way to say it. Well, if you look at all the little bubbles around this, over the kingdom is your ministry, or worship for life is worshiping Him, inviting others is evangelism, going to be like Jesus' discipleship, community living, right, is fellowship. So we start looking at these things and say, like for us, especially for staff and elders and for our volunteer leaders, we look at this and say, okay, what we're planning on doing, does that fit what the church is supposed to be doing? We're not having a fall festival just because it'd be fun, which it will be fun, but does that help us in our community living? Does that give us an opportunity to invite others who might not come on a Sunday morning but might come and meet some people that would like that kind of event? Those are the type of things that we're thinking, because that's what Jesus has modeled we need. Both formal and relational, again, that's Acts 2. We need that together as a church formally, and also within our homes informally as well. And then you get, this would be more the process. The next one is, how do we grow in that, and how do people help? Now that's small print for y'all, isn't it? Oh, you should have already had it. Should be on your refrigerators. No, I'm just kidding. But this is what we look at when it comes to like the process. If you're first coming into the church, this first blue box is worship. So usually that's how most people plug in, is a Sunday morning. They're coming for worship, and then our hope is that people move past just Sunday morning into fellowship. We're having relationships together. We're having Mexican food and small groups and all kinds of fun stuff together. And then the next step would be serving and being able to plug in for your ministry, like how these things grow. So if you're thinking, yeah, I go to church and I don't get any of this stuff Tom talks about, well, maybe because you've never you went past worship. If you come in here 5 minutes before church and leave as soon as we say God is good, you're not going to have the relationship the church has called us to. And then again, inviting is behind it all the time. We're just always called to reach out to Jesus. There's all these things that come out of this simple fact that Jesus said, where else would I be? This is what I need. But here's the thing with structures. A lot of us don't necessarily connect with them, and it ends up sucking the life out of all of it. And I think we just need to go back to what we had with God, or with Jesus. I need a church, a body. I need a family that supports me because I have a purpose. Some of us don't even want to recognize the fact that we have a purpose. Some of us have other people tell us that we are of no worth whatsoever, and we still hold on to that as if it was some kind of truth. That's not truth. You have a purpose. You have a calling. That's what we're here for. This is to support that, help that, build that, growing community, reaching others, focusing on the Father. That's what we're here for. And so the question becomes, And I will say that this season right now, after the pandemic, or at the tail end of the pandemic, or how you want to define it, it is a much larger percentage of people I'm talking to that are dying emotionally, or dying under stress, or dying under just feeling like they're wiped out, that are trying to do things on their own, that have stepped out of church for whatever reason, and they can't understand why they're dying. It's because this is the fueling system. This is the church. This is what God created. It's the only plan. There is no plan B. And I know people who struggle because they're in some church environments that aren't necessarily what God envisioned. I mean, there's some churches in our town that struggle. If we just look at from local, there's one that I could tell you. Someone says, "Tell me the church that's all about cliques and ego." I can name that church. I've been here for a long time. Tell me the church that just wants to be Stephen Furtick so bad they can taste it. I can tell you that church. Tell me a church that's modern-day Pharisees, not Sadducees, because this particular church does believe in an afterlife, but I can name you that church. There are some. But we are so unbelievably blessed to marry with so many awesome churches of different environments and personalities, different parts doing their portion for the gospel message of Jesus Christ. There's so many options out there to plug into and grow in, not just plug into, or not just visit, or not just keep jumping around. I'll throw us in the mix. I think we're a pretty good church. I do. I think there's areas we have to grow in. We'll always be growing. Someday, I won't be the guy up here, and you'll get somebody else up here that's much better than me, and then you'll see it. Okay? But we're growing, and I like it. I like that we're a church that, one of the biggest compliments we ever got was somebody came, and they said, "One thing I like about your church is you really cannot tell who has money and who doesn't." I love that compliment. Thank you. Because that crap shouldn't matter. And it doesn't here. I love that we're a church that you can come with addiction, and that we will accept you there and will encourage you to grow from it. I love the fact that we're a church that you can come as a sinner, because we all are. Again, I don't know if you ever heard me call someone a sinner. I'm really not being mean. We all are, so it's the best insult that I've got in my box. I can call anybody a sinner, and I'm in good shape, unless if I'm home. Because Emily gets mad. No, I'm just kidding. I love that you can come here and then be encouraged to move forward and grow forward. I love that we have a place for physical challenges, emotional challenges, mental challenges. There was one time we had a family that was somewhat new to the church, and I was talking to one of the adults in that family, and they were sharing with me that they struggle with social anxiety. And just want to let me know, because, again, I'm a big community guy, and if you're an introvert or you have social anxiety, I can be a little intimidating, from that aspect, and I don't know how I'm going to plug in, how that's going to work. I said, that's great. That's great. And they said, well, most churches don't understand that because you don't really understand social anxiety unless you go through it. And I agree with it. I agree with that. But I did share that we have some anxiety in our family, and some of the experiences we went through, and I shared with them the link from the mental health series that we did last year, and which the whole goal was as a full community. Let's understand each other better. Let's understand how we can support each other and love each other better as a community. I love that we have that freedom to do that here. And one of the most exciting things I've heard in a while was when their spouse came to me and said, they watched all of it, and they said, they get us. They get us. I love that with that church. Again, we've got plenty of room to grow. But I do think we've got the doors open to offer this to you. I really do. And I get concerned right now because I don't think we see church the way that Jesus saw church. And this is when I say stuff that usually annoys somebody, but I get not being plugged into church right now because of COVID and people have sensitive needs right now. I fully get that. I'm not talking about those. I'm not talking about like we have a single mom today that's not here because her child has a cold. I fully get that. Sometimes I wonder when the whole family stays home when the kid has a cold, because I don't think that it takes the whole family to blow that kid's nose. But that's a whole other issue. That's still not what I'm talking about. We all have issues so we're not plugged in church every freaking Sunday. I wasn't even here last Sunday. I'm not trying to beat people up for that. But when depression has got you so you don't feel like getting out of bed to go to church, you need church. When you're in a financial situation that you're working 7 days a week, and this one's probably the one that would be most controversial, so you can't go to church, you're going to crash and burn. You're going to crash and burn if you don't have your community around you. And I know that the question becomes, well, what, they're trying to make ends meet, and you're saying they should quit the job? Maybe. Or maybe get a different job, or whatever the case may be. I mean, I always joke about, I'll give you a pastor's note, like a doctor's note for your job if you need off on Sundays. No employer has ever accepted that yet. But I'm telling you, you're going to crash and burn. And if it's me saying you need to find, or can we help you find a new job so that you can be freed up for whatever, church community that God is calling you to within this, and we'll help you find another church community if you need Saturday nights, whatever it takes. But that's not me being a jerk trying to get people in this room. That's me saying, you need this. And Jesus loved you enough to model it, and he has his church care about you enough to reach out to you and say, I'm really concerned that you're going to crash and burn. And I've seen it time and time again. I've seen people time and time again have a relationship fall apart. And they end up running to God and running to church. Or they have a medical condition. Pray for me, pray for me, pray for me. And as soon as that parachute moment is gone, they just go back into the world again. This is a system for our life. It is our breath. And I think we're missing it. And so if someone says to you, man, I think it's nuts that you quit your job and got another job so that you could be at church on Sundays, that the answer should be, where else would I be? Where else would I be? The world doesn't offer me this. I need to be in step. I need to be able to have my community around me. I need to be reminded that I have a purpose. I need to be reminded that God has a plan. I need to be in a place where I can worship him and just connect with him one-on-one. And once a week is not enough, but it's part of how I do this with community. I need people that care about me. I need a system that's around me that God designed to be the fulfillment instead of some kind of cheap substitute that's easy, that's quick, and it's just, I want to fix. They don't last. With my son's situation, as most of you guys know, I was gone about 8 days, 9 days. And he's in a very challenging situation, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to be down there with him. And God's done many things. But one of the things that came up is he's a very hard worker. He's a very integrity person. And he's building a certain life. And anything else that was not part of that certain life kind of went to the wayside, which include church for him. And now that what he was building has fallen apart, he very much recognized that he needs community. He needs somebody. He needs something. And so we got to talking about his roots in the church. We got talking about church down there. There's a church that's just 15 minutes from his house called Divine that we visit when we're down there. That's a contemporary church. It's kind of like reminds us a little bit of here in some ways. And so he went to church with me. We took the kids and we did the playground and, kind of let them get familiar. We met with the pastor so they can get face-to-face a little bit. And he wants to, we've talked about him following up with the pastor and those type of things. Because we need community. We just do. When everything that the world has given us is stripped away, we need community. And it kills me to see him in that spot, but I know God's going to move in it. But while we were there at church, Mike, the pastor, was sharing that the night before they had a funeral there for one of the long-term members, and this gentleman had been part of AA for about 30 years of his life, Alcoholics Anonymous. And they had a packed house from the ripple effects of the ministry that he had done through AA. And they had open mic time where people were just coming up and sharing testimony of the difference he made in their life, whether it be from his speaking or being a sponsor. I think they counted that he was a sponsor to over 30 people in his lifetime. There's a lot of different people come up and speaking, and the thing that he took note of is, first off, even though it wasn't an AA meeting, almost all of them started out with, "Hi, I'm Steve, I'm alcoholic," and everybody says, "Hi, Steve," back. And then they just were very real about their struggles, about the challenges, and he realized that we as the church don't do humility in real life like AA. Like they've got it nailed. To start out and just say, "Hey, I'm Tom and I'm a sinner, and this is what I'm struggling with," is very different than us seeing each other on the front porch. "How was your week?" "My week was great." "How was your week?" "Oh, I'm doing good." And we don't want other people to know that we're train wrecks. That's not what we're built for. That's not what the church is. And so I'd rather celebrate with people who are celebrating and cry with people who are crying. And I think the church is designed to do that as God has called us to do, whether it be relationships, being alone, depression, job, disconnected from God, trials, purposes in our lives, singing together, focusing on others. When we forget the blessings we do have, and to be reminded of those things, we need those things together. I think there's just a tidal wave of people that are struggling. And the answer, quite frankly, is within our own choices. Here's the result in Jesus' life. It's very similar to the verses we started with. Jesus went down with his parents, and he came to Nazareth, and he was submissive to them. And his mother treasured up all of these things in her heart. We've heard that phrase before. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with man. Here's what I can guarantee you. If church becomes something that's real to you, local body church, if Christian community becomes real to you, I will guarantee you an increase of wisdom. Guarantee it. Because the Bible tells us so. I guarantee that you will grow in stature and in favor with people and in favor with God. And if that's not a good life goal, I think you might be on the wrong path.